Hidden deep in the redwoods of Northern California lies a secret gathering place. 2,700 acres of shadow and silence. For nearly a century and a half, the most powerful men in the world have met here, away from press, away from law, away from the prying eyes of the world. They come cloaked in ritual and firelight, beneath a 40-foot stone owl. To do what? Well, we may just uncover that in today's video. The Grove is not a myth, it is real, and it's older than most empires of men. And just know that the ruling elite certainly do not want this information revealed. Before we begin, I want to let you know a few things. I wouldn't be surprised if this, or eventually, the Somerset Belanoff and Mothers of Darkness videos are taken down, so be aware of that. With this video, however, I'm going to do my best to lay things out chronologically, but there is a lot of symbolism tucked within the lore of this place, and really, the organization that meets there. So follow me as we unweave the webs of the elite and delve into Bohemian Grove. The forest was not silent. In June of 1878, the redwoods of Marin County concealed a conspiracy. A band of men had wandered among them, with jugs of whiskey, lanterns that glowed like captured moons, and poems folded into their coat pockets. They were journalists, actors, painters, and writers, members of the fledgling Bohemian Club, founded 6 years earlier in San Francisco. Tonight was no ordinary gathering. It was a farewell party for their friend, actor Henry Edwards, who was leaving the city to pursue new stages. The men unrolled blankets across the forest floor. They stacked wood and lit a bonfire that spat sparks into the branches. Beneath the dark canopies that stood for centuries before them, they sang songs, declaimed verses, and toasted Edwards with laughter and drink. No one could have known that this improvisational celebration, half farewell, half woodland celebration, or so they say, would become ritual. The next summer they returned, and the next, and thus began a tradition rooted in firelight and alcohol that began to calcify into something larger. At first, the gatherings were a carnival of misfits, reporters seeking escape from headlines, actors eager to recite Shakespeare under the stars, painters who saw the redwoods as cathedral spires. They called themselves Bohemians with a sense of defiance, proud to be outsiders in the industrial rush of the Gilded Age in San Francisco. But as the years turned, money followed art. Wealthy patrons, the men who owned banks, railroads, and newspapers were invited in. They brought funds, comfort, and a sense of permanence. They also brought with them control. The artists remained, but increasingly as entertainment. Their poems and plays performed for audiences of men who measured their worth in fortunes, not stanzas. By the early 20th century, the Bohemian Grove encampment had migrated to Monterey, California, where the club purchased 27 acres of redwood forest. Here, far from prying eyes, tents gave way to rustic cabins, and the summer retreat evolved into an institution. The Bohemians had created a stage. The financiers and politicians, the ruling elite, had seized it. It was in the late 1920s that the Owl Shrine appeared. Constructed of concrete and steel, over 30 feet tall, the statue squatted at the edge of the Grove's lake. Its eyes were unblinking and hollow, its feathered bulk mottled with moss to disguise the artifice. Some said it looked ancient, as though it had always stood there, a monolith of watchful stone. Why an owl, though? The bird had been a part of the Bohemian Club's iconography since the beginning, supposedly standing for wisdom, secrecy, and nocturnal vengeance. Yet in this setting, framed by fire and shadow, the owl took on another resonance. It was no longer a symbol, but an idol, a backdrop against which rituals would unfold. Others say that the owl represents the ancient deity, Moloch. Moloch was used in connection with Semitic, Babylonian, and Canaanite cults that offered child sacrifices to the statue of their deity. One of the alleged symbols of the deity is a horned owl. This comes up often in conspiracy discussion circles, and especially now due to some strange references in the Podesta emails that were revealed by WikiLeaks. The ancient sacrifice ritual involved a gigantic bronze statue of the god, shown in various forms, into whose hands the bound firstborn children of the worshippers were placed upon an altar. The bound children would slide from the statue's hands into a cauldron at the base of the statue, where a raging fire would consume them. The statue was usually a bull, sometimes an image of Kronos. However, some theorists suggest that an owl was used as well, though I can find no ancient use of an owl in connection with this practice. The owl connection to Moloch seems something belonging more to modern times. Yet, given the involvement of fire, the burning of an effigy, which there'll be more on that later, one can't help but draw similarities or believe that the owl could indeed be representative of the demonic idol. Of this demonic idol. Hidden inside the owl's body were loudspeakers and lighting rigs. In later decades, the owl would speak with the booming recorded voice of CBS News anchor Walter Cronkite, echoing in a godlike register, reverberating across the lake. The idol was a theater, but theater in the dark has always been the oldest kind of magic. Weaving spiders, come not here. The motto was borrowed from Shakespeare, inscribed on club banners and repeated in speeches. Many have speculated that it means to leave your business behind. Do not plot. Do not scheme. Do not weave webs within these woods. However, scheming seems to be exactly what these people do. Men of wealth and politics speak off the record, shielded by redwood trunks and guarded gates. The outside world is unable to hear just what goes on inside. Each day during the encampment, as mist clung to the surface of the artificial lake, prominent members and invited guests gave lectures. Astronauts, secretaries of defense, CEOs, judges, and future presidents would pledge their allegiance and stand where the owl could watch them. It was in these talks that alliances were forged, and sometimes policy was quietly shaped. To the public, the Grove was a party. To those within, it was also a council. The spiders wove their webs anyway, and they simply did it in the shadows. On the first night of every encampment, firelight flickers across the trunks as men in hooded robes march toward the lake, torches raised, and the owl looms. The ritual that takes place is called the Cremation of Care. It dates back to the 1880s, devised by members who believed that to truly enjoy the retreat, they must symbolically shed their worries. They personified those burdens as dull care, a life-sized effigy draped in black, often moaning through hidden speakers. At the edge of the water, the effigy is condemned. Priests in robes chant in archaic tones. Trumpets blare. The giant owl speaks, its voice echoing like thunder in the canopy. Finally, Care is set alight. Flames engulf the effigy. Screams and sparks rise against the night. All while men in business suits and silk camp robes cheer from the shadows. To the club, it is supposedly just an allegory, the burning of worldly worry, a collective exorcism of responsibility. To outsiders, when the first leaked footage surfaced, it looked like something else entirely different. A sacrifice, a satanic rite. But could it be just that? The feeling one receives when watching the leaked footage of what takes place within these darkened woods doesn't give unburdening vibes. Instead, it instills within one a sense of anxiety, fear even. If you ask me, albeit this is speculation on my part, if the truth of what the statue really represents is true, then the effigy is a pseudo-sacrifice to try and seal or empower whatever their mission is. It could be the exorcism of their collective responsibilities, or it could be something very different, something much darker. In the late summer of 1942, the Redwoods bore silent witness to something that would change history itself. The S1 Executive Committee, the select group overseeing America's atomic research during World War II, convened at Bohemian Grove. Present were Ernest Lawrence, J. Robert Oppenheimer, James Conant, and others, men whose names would become synonymous with the Manhattan Project. A photograph survives from this meeting. Scientists and administrators in ties and jackets, standing stiffly against the backdrop of trunks that had lived since the Crusades. The photo looks benign, yet this is where discussions advanced on how theoretical physics could be weaponized into fire enough to end cities. The Bohemians later boasted that the atomic bomb was conceived here. That claim obviously is overstated, though, because the project had been brewing across universities and labs for quite some time by then. But it is true that on these grounds, beneath these canopies, the machinery of annihilation clicked one notch forward. Among many high-profile guests, the Grove was no stranger to presidents. Herbert Hoover joined the Bohemian Club in 1913 and rarely missed a summer thereafter. He belonged to the Caveman Camp, a rustic cluster of cabins that became a hub for Stanford alumni and industrialists. Hoover would sit by the fire long after his presidency, his silhouette familiar among the flames. For him, the retreat was a sanctuary. He called it the place where the wary may find themselves and forget the world's turmoil. Yet even Hoover could not resist its political uses. In 1950, as a retired elder statesman, he brought along a young congressman named Richard Nixon. Nixon entered those woods as a rising politician, and he left with the beginnings of alliances that would shape his path to the White House. They're not the only ones, however. Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and both George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush have all spent time engaging in the rituals within Bohemian Grove. It truly makes you think, doesn't it? And these are just the ones that we know about. During the retreat, every encampment builds towards a climax of theater. On the final weekend, in an act known as Jinks, in which hundreds of members participate in, costumes glint in torchlight, orchestras thunder, and fireworks crown the canopy. They say that the plays are original, sometimes mythic dramas, sometimes light-hearted extravaganzas, CEOs and cabinet officials belting arias in drag or toga. But within the Grove, they seem to serve a deeper function. The theater binds the men together. It recalls the club's artistic roots, even as presidents and plutocrats dominate the audience, and it reinforces a message. Power here is cloaked in play. What is said seriously at the lake can be disguised as jest upon the stage. Reading deeper into this, in my opinion, these plays are magic rituals, attempts to conjure or alter one's world through will, perhaps through the power of their alleged deity, Moloch. The costumes may serve as some kind of humiliation ritual, or perhaps it's just the members expressing their true selves or intentions. It's hard to say, but some very strange things certainly have taken place within the redwoods here. Near the water, a wooden carving watches over the lake. It's that of Saint John of Nepomuk, a medieval saint who was drowned in Prague rather than betray a confessor's secret. His lips are sealed beneath carved fingers. He is the Grove's unofficial patron, but his presence is no accident. Every ritual, every toast, every lakeside whisper is bound by the same oath: silence outside the trees. The owl may allegedly symbolize wisdom, but St. John symbolizes secrecy. Together, they create the code of Bohemian Grove. What happens here does not leave here. It is a code that has endured from Hoover to Nixon, Reagan to Bush, and beyond. A code that cloaks. A code the redwoods still keep. In my opinion, the silence of the saint and how he passed away is a warning to all who enter and participate within Bohemian Grove that what is said here stays here, or else. By the 1980s, the Grove's veil had thinned. Mainstream outlets were beginning to sniff around. ABC News ran a special in 1981, and Mother Jones dispatched correspondence. In 1989, Philip Weiss of Spy magazine infiltrated the Grove for an entire week. His report was surreal. Cabinet members urinating on redwoods, billionaires stumbling drunk by mid-morning, theatrical skits staged by men who could move markets with a single phone call. Weiss described it as a collision of debauchery and power, a place where nothing mattered, and yet everything did. When he was caught, he was arrested for trespassing, but the piece had already been written, and the Grove's secrets had already spilled onto the page. The most famous breach came 2 decades later. In July 2000, broadcaster Alex Jones and journalist Ron Johnson slipped into the Grove during the Cremation of Care, and thankfully, Jones had brought a hidden camera. The resulting footage, although grainy, covered the infiltration to the shot from the tree line, showing the ritual in full, and it would eventually spread like wildfire online. Torchlight, hooded robes, the owl shrine booming with a disembodied voice. To Jones, it was proof of a satanic ritual. The truth was that maybe it always had been all along. For millions who had never heard of Bohemian Grove, the tape was their first glimpse, and once seen, it could not be unseen. Video segments of the expose have and will be shown throughout this video. This proof seemed to cement the belief in many of the existence of a powerful cabal that controlled the world from behind the scenes. In January 2002, a man named Richard McCaslin armed himself with assault rifles, explosives, and incendiaries. Styling himself as the Phantom Patriot, he broke into Bohemian Grove at night, intent on exposing and destroying the satanic cabal he believed met there. He set fires, searched cabins, and prepared for confrontation. He found nothing but silence and empty rooms. He was then arrested by Sonoma County deputies who were alerted by tightened security measures within the grove. McCaslin told authorities he had been inspired by Alex Jones's video. It's hard telling exactly what would have transpired if McCaslin would have been able to make his way inside the gates when the area was occupied. Clearly, he must have thought that they were there 24/7 instead of meeting just once a year, every summer. In due time, while infiltrators snuck through the woods, protesters marched openly at the gates. From the 1980s onward, activists organized the Bohemian Grove Action Network. Their signs accused the club of elitism, secrecy, and undemocratic influence. Some carried banners decrying nuclear weapons. Others denounced corporate greed. Every July, the sleepy town of Monterrey saw a clash between demonstrators and the convoys of limousines and buses ferrying members past. For locals, it was a carnival of tension. Chants and bullhorns outside, champagne and firelight inside. The protests dwindled by the 2010s, but their message lingered. The grove symbolized inequality, secrecy, and the arrogance of unaccountable power. Following the protests of the 2010s, things seemed to quiet down for a while. However, in 2023, the redwoods became headlines once again. Investigative journalists revealed that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas had for years been a guest at Bohemian Grove, hosted by his billionaire patron, Harlan Crow. There is no transcript of what Thomas heard or said under the canopy, but the facts are stark. Crow and his circle of wealthy allies regularly flew him to elite gatherings, including the Grove. And at the Grove, Crow's camp was no ordinary circle. It included some of the wealthiest donors in America, men with direct interests in the court's rulings. No one can prove what was discussed, yet the symbolism was enough. The Grove, always a metaphor for secrecy, had become a flashpoint for judicial ethics. If the law itself was walking among the redwoods, whose justice did it serve exactly? And why don't you read more about Bohemian Grove in the press? The answer, uncomfortable as it is because the press barons are inside. For decades, editors, owners, and anchors, from Walter Cronkite to Rupert Murdoch's circle, Sumner Redstone and Associates, and many more, have been among the Bohemians. The result perhaps contributes to a conspiracy of total control of the media. If, for example, you are a journalist looking to expose the secrets within, if your boss is in the redwoods, how sharp can your pen truly be? When the Grove does meet, it's interesting to see just who controls the security apparatus. Fences run for miles. Guards patrol year-round. Infrared sensors line the perimeters. Motion detectors are hidden in the brush. Surveillance cameras hang from redwood trunks like unblinking eyes. And these are just the known measures. I'm sure since various infiltrations, they've probably added additional means. During encampments, security swells. Private contractors, off-duty police, even Secret Service if a sitting president is present. Radios crackle with code names, Locals know the sight of helicopters overhead, the convoys of black limousines slipping down narrow Monterio roads. The Grove's theology is secrecy, and its liturgy is security. Every intruder caught, every protest dispersed, every fence mended is another affirmation that silence will be preserved. Every high-profile individual that enters the gates, every spider that weaves a web, these said webs seem to be interconnected in one way or another. And of course, Bohemian Grove is not the only place that these individuals convene, at least that we know of. I've described other horrific rituals that have allegedly taken place at other locations, such as in my Mothers of Darkness Castle video. One of these supposed rituals that has been described as taking place in many places, including the United States, with alleged survivors describing tall trees surrounding the area, is a horrific display of barbarism known as the most dangerous game, or the hunting game.
At the hunting parties, they would they'd have all these expendable children outside in the woods, and usually they have holding grounds, like a tunnel system or something underground where they hold the kids in cages until the time of the hunt. And the hunt usually happens later, once it's dark outside. And so what they'll do is they'll kind of make a parameter, which is pretty large, of these woods, and they'll station the different elite people around the perimeter. And then when they give the go, they release the kids, and the kids are told just to run, to hide. And that's when the elite will go through the woods and start hunting for them. When they catch them, a lot of times they will first sexually abuse them, and then they'll kill them.
The game, if one can even call it that, involves numerous individuals, typically children, being released with a head start into the woods, and then being systematically hunted down by attendees who are amassed to presume secrecy and devoid any infiltrators of knowing the true identity of the participants. Upon being hunted down, the blood and or adrenal glands are extracted and then consumed as a part of the closing ritual. Now, of course, one can't definitively prove that any of this is taking place, but given testimony and delving into various conspiracies, it certainly makes one think. And perhaps these very acts are disguised by or drowned out by the sounds of the previously mentioned hijinks towards the closing weekend. Again, we may never know the truth, and there's endless speculation, but if people were hunting other people within a massive grove of gigantic trees, perhaps fireworks, plays, and cheers may drown out the screams of the prey. The grove does not end when the torches dim. Each summer, the limousines roll away, the cabins are shuttered, and the river returns to silence. But silence is not absence. The echoes remain. Deals made in laughter ripple outward into policy. Friendships forged in firelight harden into alliances that shape wars, economies, and courts. And still, the owl watches, stone and silent, as it has for nearly a century. We will probably never know all that has been whispered here. The transcripts are incomplete, if not typically non-existent. The photographs partial, the testimonies fractured. Yet with what little information escapes, we get glimpses of power unmasked. The Bohemian Grove endures because its power lies not in what can be proved, but in what can never be disproved. In shadows, in silence, in the space between myth and memory, its influence lingers. So, is Bohemian Grove a gathering place for the elite to conduct satanic idol worship and unspeakable rituals? Or is it just a men's club that happens to have a very exclusive membership? Or is it a bit of both? The conclusion ultimately is up to you to decide. Thank you guys so much for watching this latest video. I've always found conspiracies incredibly fascinating, the ones that could allegedly be true. To me, those are the scariest, and this one fits perfectly among the others. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a like and a hype. All those things help me out tremendously, aside from you sharing my videos with the world, or even just a friend. You can support the channel by watching another video coming up next, or by becoming a channel member by clicking Join Now here on YouTube, or by going to patreon.com/mysteryarchives and joining there, or by grabbing yourself one of my books or some of my other merchandise at mysteryarchives.myshopify.com. Thank you all again, and I'll see you very soon with another brand new video. This has been Cody here at Mystery Archives. Please stay safe out there from creepy rituals and real-life monsters and anything else that may go bump in the night. And take care. I'll see you next time.